right, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'll start by sharing my screen. And so the topic of discussion today that we're going to be focusing on is all of the end user things. This is going to go through the front end from the point at which we start with the data entry and just all the way through, lightly touching on, what happens with the data points and the submissions, what is going to happen, from the monitoring perspective with the data management team. And then, we'll take some questions from there. We'll review a little bit as well with some of the reporting tools that we might have available that'll help you to do your review. And then, kind of close out with that last piece of the puzzle before the study is closed out with PI signatures. So to start, when we're doing the data entry, again, and I'll just zoom in a little bit here. We discussed this in one of the earlier sessions and how to make sure that a user has access to the system, where they're going to access the different vaults. Just keep in mind that if you are a user and have access to multiple vaults, you will come down here to this drop-down menu and select the specific environment that you want to have access to. The best way to ensure whether you're in the correct Veeva vault is by verifying that you'll see here this clinical data. For EDC, it's clinical data. If you see anything other than clinical data, navigate here to the little drop-down and get to exactly which vault that you want. So from this view, assuming that we are the site personnel, that's where we're going to start. We will get started with either creating new casebook, right? You'll come in here, create the new casebook, and begin to do your data entry. Or at the same time, let's say data entry has already been completed, and now you're in here to review any of the open items that you have. One of the best places to quickly go to where you have to be for the data entry is using the Site Tasks menu. If we expand this, you'll be able to directly go to review all of the incomplete blank forms. If there's any overdue forms, they will be noted here as well. Anything requiring signatures and anything that has open queries. So these are all directly related to the actions that from the site perspective you will have to take. And it's just going to help streamline where you need to go. Now, there's many ways of doing the same exact thing in the system. So if you're instead a user that likes to just go in, you're at your site and you want to just review it here from this space, absolutely you can do that. Go from one to the next and do the review, the data entry that you need to. The biggest thing is just keep in mind, green is good. So when we are looking at a form here, and I'll show you an example. If we're looking at the form and if the icon is green, that means that you are good to go. You don't have any queries that are left to complete or address. You don't have any signatures that are required. It's quick and easy. That's it. Green is good. On the other hand, so you'll see this little green icon here. On the other hand, if you see a red icon, that indicates that it's going to be overdue. Orange is incomplete. And then the little question mark here, and I'll show you an example of what this looks like. That just means that there's action required. So that's also going to be, if you're reviewing it this way, it's another way to quickly get to exactly what is going to require action from you in order to do this. At the same time, we do have a similar view from the review perspective. So I am logged in. I do have much higher access than, these individual roles would just in this system right now. From the monitoring and data management perspective, the site is now doing data entry. And at the same time, you can be reviewing that entry. So you're going to come in here, you'll navigate. Again, if you have multiple study environments available to you, you'll be able to see all of those. Similar to how we saw that Site Tasks menu, we have this menu here as well. It's going to show you how many sites that you have, how many queries possibly need to be actioned as well. And these are going to be linked and it'll take you directly to those queries. But you could also navigate here directly from study sites. So if you have access to multiple studies and you just want to, you're coming in here to get to a specific site, it's going to show you the list of sites instead. And, you might have an individual site that's duplicated across multiple studies, in which case it'll just be listed twice. Whereas navigating here from the studies menu just reverses the order of those two columns, and it's just going to get you there in a different way. So I'm going to navigate here back to the site, and we're going to just click on the site that we have open, and you'll see the view is very similar. But the items, the components that you're going to see here are based on, the role that and the actions that you might have in the system. So here you could see we have the subject, we have the previous visit that was submitted, the next visit that's going to be required. You could briefly see the subject status, but at the same time, again, depending on the permissions that you have, you'll be able to see the total counts, the open queries, answered queries, overdue forms. If there's anything ready for SDV, there will be a number indicated here as well. So it's, just a really nice landing page, a good dashboard for you to get started with in your review if you're coming in here from the perspective of a monitor or a data manager to start to do that. While you're doing this, and we'll go into the same exact casebook that we just created data entry for, as we expand this, you're going to see the full list of the data that's required for entry or that's required for review from this space. Now, there's no point in reviewing components that are still waiting for data entry. So here, what I like to do is always ensure that this quick view is toggled on. And that's going to remove everything else. It's going to remove the clutter that is not needed because it's not ready for any action yet from your end. So as soon as I click this, now the entire right side of the screen will be populated with a very similar view to what we saw in the data entry space. But this does not have any data entry capabilities. It's only data review. As this role, you can also click this link to view it from the site perspective. So this will be a little screenshot, a little image of exactly what the site will look at. It doesn't show the full schedule and everything like that, the way that you did in the previous view, but at least it's going to show you, what questions were they showing. It'll indicate the query that's there as well. It's just nice to sometimes get that perspective from the site to make sure that if there's any questions or confusion, you can help guide them in that way. In this role, in the review, again, depending on your role, you may or may not have access to close a query. So for example, if this is a system role like this, a monitor perhaps will not be able to close this query. They could comment on the query, but they cannot close it. But then a lead data manager or another, someone in the DM role can come in and will see the actions to close the query or comment. Based on the permissions that you have, the system will then enable or disable different features of what you're capable of doing. If you need to have access to something and you're finding that your role does not give you that access, that's the point at which you would take that back to the team and we can work on the roles that are available or the role that you are assigned to ensure that you can do everything that you need in the system here. But what you would be doing, right? Actions in this space would be, all right, we're ready to close the query, or I'm here to comment on the query. So we'll say, please ensure data is entered. But you know what? Looking at this, we're basically doing the same thing twice. And so one of the things that's going to be really helpful is that the system part has all of these things already programmed in here. I'm sure you're familiar with this in other systems as well, where it's not going to really need you to do that kind of redundant entry. You can monitor it, yes. You can make sure that it's being actioned, but coming in here and essentially posing the same query again, it's time that you don't need to spend. It's work that you don't need to do. You just simply will want to monitor that as you're going through. So just make sure that you're coming in here, reviewing all of the data that's been entered. And then, from the perspective of who you are, if you're a monitor, you will also then have to do SDV. You'll note here that all of these and this green circle here, this is our SDV column. So by checking the box here, you've confirmed that SDV has been completed. You've verified the data to the source, and now you've completed it. You're good to go. So you'll go ahead and hit save. In this configuration for this particular study, it's optional. And so it indicates optional. If it is not optional, then it will be, of course, required, or it's just not going to be configured at all. And you'll know that based on what you're seeing here. So if it's not optional, if it's required, then this optional goes away. The circle is just green and you have to complete it. Otherwise, if it's no review at all, then there would be nothing present in this column. There would be no circle for you to select. So you do this, you save at the top of the page, and then you move on to whatever the next task is. In this design, again, depending on the role, what you're doing in the study, we do have quite a bit configured in here from the perspective of the protocol deviations, right? So If you're in here and you realize, hey, actually looking at this date here, this is incorrect. This actually should be updated. It looks like we have a protocol deviation. You can come in here and you'll click on this little ellipses here, and the ellipses will allow you to create a protocol deviation. We do have the categories and subcategories that have been configured. So you'll now go through, enter the information that you need, enter the summary. The severity has been configured in here as well. Provide your description, enter the dates, and you'll go ahead and save that. That will then be entered into the system. If you recall at the very beginning, we had our review tab up at the top, and now our protocol deviations that we create will also be able to be monitored here from this view. Everything that you need to do from the monitor and data management perspective is largely going to be right here in review. So in addition to that, some other things that you'll have available in the actions menu here will come in actions, and you have the option to now do exporting, look at audit trail information, as well as freeze and lock items. So to start, we're looking at the export blank PDF and the detailed PDF. The blank PDF, this is going to be, just like exporting the CRF view of the study in the PDF format. It's, helpful to have if you want to reference that, if you want to review that in any way. And then the detailed PDF is just going to include the detail as well as audit trails and queries as an option if you select these choices in the export for you, so you can review that as well if needed. This is something that, is also going to occur towards the closeout phase of the study when we're doing all of our PI approvals and the PDF exports and such. This will be available then, but if for any reason you needed that throughout the duration of the study, you can easily access this here. This is something, and I'm just going to go back to the site view. So site does data entry. We're going to go back to the data entry tab and just note that this same option to do the exports is going to be available from the site perspective as well. So these will always be available for you. Don't be alarmed by this delete subject option. The typical user does not have delete subject. I have the highest level of permissions in here, so I see this as an option, but otherwise no one can go in there and just delete the subject, ignore that. So you'll export the PDFs. Now, in addition to that, we have our audit trail. The audit trail is captured at every level, and it's going to vary in what it shows based on what is happening. So, right, you have from the full subject, you could view your subject audit trail. You can do this at the event. The form will be a tier below that, and all of the items within the form will be a tier below that. So you can look at individual item audit trail information, and that's going to show you different types of data, right? The audit trails are not going to be kind of waterfalled in. What you see in the item audit trail will not be present in the form audit trail, because it's looking at a different type of action that's happening. If you were to export, however, and selected to include if you were to export, where is it? The PDFs here. If you were to export the PDFs here and selected the option to include the audit trails from all levels are going to be included in that instance. And then we have our freeze and lock. So these are going to be, I think, really important as the process to do that review, the freezing and locking is identified. When you're performing these actions, if the data entry has already been completed, but you do not want the site to edit the data, however, you still want the team to be able to review queries, perform SDV, you can freeze. This will still allow for other actions to take place, but the data itself cannot be changed until the form is unfrozen. Whereas if you were to lock an event or a form or an item, you cannot do anything. None of those actions are possible. You cannot answer queries. You cannot do additional review. You can't edit the data. Once it's locked, it's locked. That's the final state of the process for the data entry. So these features are used, I guess it really depends on identifying what your process is. If you want to allow for data entry, if you want all of the design and review to be completely closed off, we have the option to do both. There is no requirement to do one before the other. That option is going to be varied between sponsor to sponsor. So you want to, do the option, identify what is going to be best for your organization and follow that process through. A few additional things to note here, and I'm going to go back to the home page in review. So we're still in the review tab. I've selected my study, and we have a few other options available as well. So, same thing, the queries, this is going to allow you to go directly to the query that have been posed that are present on the study. Hopefully, it's never going to be a situation where you have 186 queries within a study. Again, this is specific to the dev environment where we were doing our configuration. So lots of design ongoing, but you'll come in here and close these out as quickly as they appear. Then we have this option in here for snapshots. So snapshots, this is where we're going to start to utilize this feature for either interim or final study closeout. Depending on your process, what this will do, it's like a bulk action. So you can create a snapshot, and you as a monitor or a data manager will say, yep, so I have this option. I have an interim review coming. I want to do a little closeout there for the first 3 visits in the study design. You can come in here and you'll say, from my baseline visit to my month 12, I want to, maybe perhaps include unscheduled events. I want to include all of these XYZ forms. And what it will do is that if your actions here, your ready states are selected and the criteria is met within the casebook, it'll pull that into a bulk job. And that bulk job will then allow you to either freeze or lock these. Rather than having to go one by one per subject, you can do all of your review and then take these final actions at the end. So if your state is only that it needs to be completed, then you want to freeze it. Okay, you just check that box. Now, maybe if you say, not only do you want the forms to be completed, you also want the queries to be answered and closed, and then that's when you'll freeze it. And then after that point, you want to lock it once all of the events and forms are SDV DMR complete and everything has been signed. And that's going to be the ready state for your locking. These again, it's multi-select, it's individual select, however you want to do this, you set the criteria, you configure this, what you need to. The goal here is to get your results. So let's name this guy here. So once we have our results, this is going to run and refresh. And basically what we'll see is a list of all of the subjects that are ready for these actions. You'll see anything that's ready for freeze or lock. It'll show you how many have already been frozen and locked, as well as additional information such as incomplete forms, queries, anything requiring signatures, etc. This is, again, the purpose of this is to help you to do more bulk actions. From here, you'll be able to say, okay, well, we have a total of 17 subjects, and none of them are ready for freeze or unlock. But if they were, then we would come in here and you would just click on the little icons that appear next to these, and it will allow you to complete the bulk job to possibly freeze or lock all 17 of these casebooks at the exact same time, rather than having to do it one by one. In addition to that, from the review tab, you will also have access to certain listings and exports. The information that you see within the listings and exports section here is almost identical to the job schedule that you have available as well. A few differences is that you will be able to pull not right now. So here you can do the PDFs. Everything else though is going to be the same in both. So it doesn't really matter which option you go to. Let's say we wanted to come in here and run a query detail listing, perhaps for select sites, perhaps for all of them. This is going to be dependent on, again, the access that you have in the system. So if you're in this system, you only have access to one of the 2 sites. If you were to run this job and selected it to run for all countries and all sites, it would only run for those that you have access to. So there's no need to really go in here and do additional selections there. You can also set this to run at a set frequency. And once you do that, it'll just be available, it'll be scheduled, and you can view it here. Just make sure when you're doing this that you review the last completion date or run the job ad hoc each time to make sure that at the time that you're pulling the data, it is the most up to date, because the last thing we need is for an entry to be in here and it be outdated, and that's what you're referencing. After today, following the 25R3 release that we have, the system in this view is also going to be able to pull a training completion report. Prior to this, this was something that only the user administrator would be able to pull. But from this point forward, the monitors and the data management team will be able to pull a report of the training completion status for the site team as well. And this way you'll be able to verify that, if someone is having access or issues getting access to the system, we could rule out whether it's because of training. If it is, it's simple. They just come in here and complete the training. But if it's not the training, then we can then work to troubleshoot that issue as well. The bulk of the work that we do in the system here is going to be here in the review tab. That would be my opinion. So now, we've come in, we've done the review. The queries have been answered or commented on. The site is coming back in here to data entry, going into the form again and responding to doing additional data entry, whatever it is that they need. Now we're getting to the point where the PI has to do the signatures. So the PI getting ready to do the signatures, you can do this in a few ways. In this view, you can come in here and select the option to sign all applicable forms within the casebook. In addition to that, you can also navigate to an individual form and have the option to sign the form in this view. So you could do it at an individual form. You could do it at the whole casebook level. You could go even beyond that. As long as it's been enabled in the study, and it is enabled by default, you have to turn it off. You would come in here and do the bulk sign casebooks. And now this is going to review all subjects that are eligible for signatures, keeping in mind that in order to do signatures, you cannot have any open queries. You have to have completed data. It has to be that green icon. Green is good. As long as the data has been entered, there's no queries, nothing is overdue, you'll be able to come in here and do the signatures. You'll do this bulk action. We have this signature text already programmed in here, and then you'll sign it. Once the signing has been completed, and I'm just going to cancel this out here because I don't want it to ruin the work that we're doing here. But once it's completed, you'll be able to come in here and quickly see the status of the casebook signature. So yes, it's great that we're going through and maintaining the forms as we're doing the signing if you're doing it one by one there. But this signature complete is only going to update to yes once the entire casebook has been signed. There cannot be any open signatures or incomplete signatures, I guess signatures that did not apply due to open queries or anything like that. Or this status will continue to remain as no. At the same time, let's say, for example, data had been signed, that was good to go, but for some reason, maybe we had to do updates to the data entry. As soon as that data is updated, the signature is now broken, and you will have to come back in here and sign it again. The signature history is going to be great for you to quickly review any updates to the signature. It's basically a signature audit trail that's going to be tracked. It's something that you can view individually within each casebook as well if you're navigating to that specific page. But otherwise out here for the whole site level, you can just click this job here and it'll show you that. Now, lastly, you're coming in here, you're doing data review. The review tab is what we use for monitors. However, data managers are also going to have additional work that's happening, and that's going to be in the EDC tools tab. And I'll navigate here in just a second. At the same time, this study has been configured, as will the other studies in the future, be configured for coder and anything else that might be required in here. And there are different sections, different areas that you can go to perform those activities. So the coder would come to the coder tab, perform those. You can go to the tools as a coder as well and perform, like perhaps you're assigning the synonym list, perhaps you're updating the dictionaries that are being referenced for the AE forms, whatever it may be, you will have to do that as well. But I'm going to navigate now to EDC tools, and all that it is exactly what it says. They're tools to be used in this EDC space. So we have our study, and what you see here again is going to be dependent on what permissions you have in the system. So the permissions that I have are one of the highest. I am probably going to be able to see much more than anyone here on the call will be able to in the future, with the exception of possibly just Lauren. So you're going to come in, the very first thing that we have is study settings. These settings have to be verified. And as long as everything is perfect, it's good to go. No additional changes will be needed. We do have some default settings that will be applied each time. But just note that should you need to make any updates, this is where you would do it. This is also the space that the DM team is adding the countries and the sites for the study. In the case that we have any configured email notification rules, they're doing email group assignments to verify that the correct team is receiving the email notifications. For the review plans, we want to make sure, the review plan has been created in the design space, but it doesn't become implemented unless we have the criteria assigned. So you're doing that. Now, these activities here are usually done as a one-time thing unless there's any amendments to the study design or any changes that have been made for any reason. And then they would have to come in here and be updated as well. So we'll go through and through, and down here at the bottom, we have a similar job history, job schedule page. So in this view, we can run many of the same jobs. So you're going to see we have our detailed PDFs, we have our listings, the form progress, event progress, query detail, and subject progress. We also at the same time have additional jobs available. Our study data extracts is something that we can use to do the full export of the study. Now, this can be, again, for interim analysis, for final study closeout, you're exporting it to do analysis. Whenever you need to do it, this right here is for our stats team. So stats will come in here, do the review. They'll make sure that they have the proper settings assigned that they need and either schedule this to be run at a set frequency or come in here and run this job ad hoc when needed. In addition to that, there's many other jobs available, but they really more so depend on the state of the study design. Many of these are only going to be used if there's amendments to the study once it's gone live for the first time. And you're going to know what you need to do based on the task that it is that you're looking for. But again, just keep in mind what you see in EDC tools is a little bit broader than what you would see in the review tab because the actions are going to be more. This is really more for that DM team, the manager, like the CTM perspective for additional actions that you would need to take. And then another space, and I'm just going to pause my screen really quickly. I want to navigate to another one of the VCU vaults here that we have. So this is going to look very similar. This is our training environment. So in the training environment, it looks, again, similar to what we just reviewed, but we now also have this option in here for clinical reporting. If you are in the system with data manager or higher permissions, you will have access to clinical reporting. This is for that stats and data management perspective, for as far as other users, perhaps this is necessary, this is helpful, and we can work to make sure that you have the proper access for that. But otherwise, you're going to be in here and you're going to be doing the review of the data. So we have every single form will be a part of the core listings, and you'll be able to say, okay, here's my form. And of course, there's no data entered on this one. Let me find one that I know we do have data entered for. I don't think the study has data entry. Okay, well, regardless. So we have all of these listings that are available, and you can also then make a package with not just these core listings, but a lot of this system as well. So from the stats perspective, you're pulling the exports, you're pulling all of the data, but you also need to be able to pull all of the study definitions. If there's been any protocol deviations configured, that is yet another system definition that we have available. So all of this will come together to create this package for you that you'll then be able to export from here or use this as your review space. So you can come in here. If there was data entered on any one of these forms, you would be able to review the data, verify what was entered in here, and make any additional review notes that you need that you could then follow up with the study. Maybe post a query in the system if there's anything that you need there. But this is kind of that final bit of the puzzle. You'll navigate back and forth. To come back to the EDC space, you'll just click on this actions menu and select EDC. And now you're back at the same page again with whatever you had access to. In addition, and this is probably the last space that we want to review before we open it up for questions, we have some standard reports and dashboards that are available for review. Based on the roles and permissions that you have, the output of the reports and dashboards will vary. So of course, if you're in the system as a coder, you'll see all of the clinical coding or WHO drug and med drug dictionaries, but otherwise nobody else needs to see that. So that will only be available for the clinical coding team. You will see many things in here that the information can be found in a few different locations. What I would say, if you are looking at something and you know that it's similarly available in a different area, navigate there. I love our reports and our dashboards, but sometimes the way that these have been configured, it's not going to be as up to date or as detailed as what you might find in the review or EDC tools tabs for those listings. And that's specifically for the listings. One of the things I highly encourage our teams to do when we're working on study design is to also think for the future, right? So we're currently working on a study. Maybe we want to review, how many queries that fired resulted in data changes. These are reports that we have available. Maybe we want to review, what was the total number of queries or the delayed forms entry in a specific site. These are some metrics that you could then pull to maybe change the way that you're going to work in the future. Perhaps if a query is firing, but the data is never changing, we might decide that that query is a little excessive or needs to be tweaked, and we can alter it to make sure that it's appropriate for what's required in the studies. Or alternatively, if a site is resulting in higher number of queries or slower data entry, that site can be provided with additional training and ensure that they know all of the proper requirements to do the data entry. There's so many reports and dashboards available. I would almost argue sometimes it's too many. It could be a little bit of data information overload, but it takes time to get comfortable and familiar with what exactly you're looking for in your output in order to get this to be exactly the view that you want. Dashboards are created based on the output that we have available in the reports. And these dashboards are going to be pretty user specific. So we have a dashboard available for study design, for coder, for the data manager, and the monitoring team. So for example, and I'm going to navigate back to the dev space just because there's a little bit more data available there. So it'll be more useful to see that output. So if we're back here in the dev space, if we went to the dashboards and I wanted to run this monitoring dashboard, it's going to take a second to run. We want to make sure that we have the select study identified that we want access to or that we want to review. Okay, so we have this and we're going to hit continue. So now this is going to take a minute to run, but this is exactly what it says. It's a little bit of a dashboard view. It's pulling all of the probably more likely data that you would need for your role and what you would be doing in the system and putting it in a dashboard. And many of these are then also linkable. So if I were to come in here and I see, okay, subject statuses by site, queries by week, number of queries by site, you can come in here and for some of them, you'll be able to click them. So let me find a good one here. Like incomplete forms. If I clicked on the incomplete forms, I would be able to come in here and see this. I can see, okay, so these are blank and these are in progress. And then as you click on that, this is going to then take you directly to the review tab. You can see all of the forms that are incomplete here. So this took us directly to this, for example, 100-meter time test. And now if it's incomplete, and you know it's incomplete because you can see this orange icon here, you can come in here and post a query on any of the items, or if you're reviewing it, whatever it is that is incomplete, perhaps everything looks like it's entered. Now you're in here, you're creating a query. Please submit the form if data is entered. And you could streamline your work that way. There's many ways to do the same thing in the system. And I really do want to stress that exactly what I did by going to the dashboards could be done by looking at the reports tab. It could also be done by exporting a form progress listing in the review tab. And even that, if you export the listing, the listings will have a clickable link. It's usually the last column in the export. That link will take you directly to this page. where I will come in here, it'll take me to this form that is incomplete, or it'll take me to the query because it's linked directly there, and you can action it that way. There are many, many ways to do the same thing in the system, depending on review, the type of review that you're doing. So just, get familiar with the system. And what I will say, thinking from the end user perspective, where this is the front end of the system, the first time you see the front end of the system, unless you truly are a site user and you're only in the system to do that data entry, there are other ways that you can do the review if you're involved in the design stage. The view, what you're seeing here in the design stage is exactly the same as what you would see in production. If you're in here for, like if we're doing the site perspective, we do have a training vault available, which is exactly the same exact design as you would see in the production vault, but it's training, and it's there for exactly that purpose, to train you to get familiar with the system and be sure that you're ready to start using it once the study is live. So you could, gain expertise, have a better understanding of how all of these use, and, kind of get your own personal mojo going before you actually start to do this live for a true study. So we have a few of these available. A few of these environments is what I mean. We have our development, our test for UAT, our training, and then finally the production. Depending on what stage of that process you're involved with, there's definitely many other ways that you could have access to the system and review and become familiar with it before the study itself is live. Now, lastly, once the study is live, the lead data manager or whoever has similar permissions in the study is going to take the action to lock the study. Until the study is locked, we cannot process closeout PDFs. So we'll come in here, we'll lock, and I want to generate the closeout PDFs. We'll hit continue. And from this point forward, what we'll see is, and it's just gonna, so it's right now generating, you'll be able to see the status here. And what's neat is that this is all done in the system, right? In the system, the data manager can lock it. The data manager can also then send the notification to the sites. Directly in the system, the site can download the PDFs as well as accept or reject the PDFs. And all of that information is then sent back to the data management team automatically. There is nothing manual required other than just going into the system and doing those tasks. So this is just going to take a minute, but while I'm waiting for this to run, this is the last action that I want to demonstrate here. So we have quite a large crowd here. I'm happy to open the floor to any questions that we might have related to what we've reviewed today, or anything that might be more relevant to what your role would be in the system in the future. Okay, so if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to interrupt, but otherwise we're just waiting here for these PDFs to generate here. Hopefully it doesn't take too much longer. And so ultimately, and it's still generating, but basically what we would see now that the study is locked, the site cannot come in here and do any casebook entry. They cannot come in here and do any signatures. The site or study has been locked. And so nothing further can be done. Now, of course, before we get to the stage, it's absolutely recommended that we don't have any open queries. Everything has been signed. Just go through and review that process first before we take that final step to do the full-on form lock or the full-on study lock. And that's, of course, just going to make that work a little bit more accurate for you. It looks like we have quite a bit of data entry here on this study here. We'll just keep refreshing. And maybe at the same time, I will try to see if we have an internal vault where we can review this as well. We'll just have to wait here because I worry that it might take the same amount of time. And you know what, actually, while we do that, something else that we can do, and I'm going to paste this link here in the chat. This is a link where as you start to work in the system, regardless of the role that you're in, I want you to become very familiar with it. This is our CDMS help pages, and it's broken down based on the role that you might have in the system. So, you know, if you're coming in here from the perspective of a monitor or data manager, you'll see all of the actions that you would need to take. And it's nice because it is kind of listed out in the order, the sequential order that you might performing these actions directly in the system. So we're coming in here, and I'm just going to come in here and look for the form locking, locking data. This is form. Okay, no, so we got to go to, there we go. So locking the study at the full site level. I'm just looking for the step here that talks about the PDFs. So this here, what we're going to see. So we were just in this view where we selected the option to generate closeout PDFs. Once they've been generated, now you can notify the site. And this site will then have the verification. They'll have this available to them. From the site perspective, and we got to see what this looks like here. Okay, so let's go to the site perspective and we'll show you there. So if we go to the site and we're reviewing closeout PDFs. So here, the closeout PDFs have been created. At the very top of the page, you're going to see the option here to either accept, well, first we download them, and the accept reject option is not available until you have downloaded it. So the site will download, then you'll have the option to either select accept or reject. Similar to how we were signing the forms, we have a signature definition that's been configured in here. And once you sign the accepted closeout PDFs, that signature definition is going to be applied once you enter your username and password. It's going to be your electronic signature. And then that's going to be sent back to the data management team, confirming that the closeout PDFs have been approved and accepted and downloaded. And that also is going to be updated in the status of the closeouts. So from that point, the data manager can save those and upload them to eTMF, whatever is needed as a part of those requirements. But that's all. What's neat is that it's done directly in the system. The only thing outside of the system is where you're actually downloading those PDFs to. So this will probably take a little bit longer, but I think the CDMS help pages here is hopefully helpful enough to show you those steps. I'm going to open it up again to any further questions if needed, but I don't want to hold the team up if that's the final job that we're waiting for. Any questions here from the team? Okay. And then I think, Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the last of the full sessions that we have here with the team. Is that correct?
Yeah, so this is our last official session. We will be opening up the EDC shortly after this. For those that need it, all these sessions have been recorded and are posted. We've been including the links to the recordings in the follow-up emails that we've been sending. And then in the email that we will send out, when we do open this up, it will have a link to the recordings for all 7 of the sessions. And then we will be available, like as you guys, start to use the system, if you need more individualized help or if you need any assistance when you're building your first study out, if you are the one that will be doing the building. We are opening this up for FDA regulated clinical trials. REDCap is still remaining at VCU for everyone that needs it for studies that wouldn't necessarily need to be in Veeva's EDC. Yes, so we do have a question in the chat. We are doing this just for new studies. If you have an existing study that's say already in REDCap, it will finish out in REDCap. If you have a industry sponsored study, you will keep using whatever database that they provide you. This is just another available resource to help you guys comply with FDA regulations. Does anyone have any other questions? So, well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. As I said, you're welcome to reach out to myself or Liz on my team. We are both, trained on the EDC and can help at any point. We do have a group email that I will pop in the chat, where you could reach anyone on my team, for help. Anything to add, Nimi? Otherwise, I think we could probably wrap
No.
up.
Yeah, and Lauren, definitely if any of the team here has questions and either you or they need to contact me, don't hesitate to do that as well. Happy to assist.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining these sessions.
Thank you.